25th Street, Harlem train station, hearing Wendy from Kentucky and looking out at New York City and all the buses and taxis. And it was like, isn't this great that I can be sitting here and connecting to this amazing educator? And as I shared with Wendy, Kentucky is so close to my heart. It has really become, this a home for me in a way. I've been to your state many times. I was at the Southern Kentucky Book Festival and really connected with those incredible women who run that. I've been back there a few times, been to Louisville, been to many of your small towns. I have been in touch with many teachers in the eastern part of Kentucky over the past few weeks, and I'm planning a trip down there with members of the Storyworks team in early October to meet teachers and kids and to just kind of be down there and hear stories. I think kids want to start sharing their stories. But I'm especially really excited to be with you. And what I want to do today is kind of take you behind the scenes into my world, into how I create the I Survive series, how my work on Storyworks and in the magazines intersects and fuels my I Survive work and vice versa, and how my ability to connect with teachers like you, with people like Wendy, is really at the very soul of what makes what I do and what makes this work so very meaningful to me. It's why I really it's what gives my work meaning and purpose. So to start out, I thought, I was thinking, what should I start out with? I thought nothing exemplifies the connection between sort of Storyworks and the magazines and I Survive more than the origin story of I Survive. So I'm going to share my screen here for a second. Okay, so let's see if we can see that. This is my just placeholder slide. Okay, so many years ago, when I have been at Scholastic for 32 years. I started out in the magazine division, and pretty shortly, I was there, I don't know, maybe 7 years or so when I became the editor of Storyworks, and that's a whole other long story. So I started, I was told by my boss at the time, Storyworks, which is a multi-genre magazine, you can put anything into it, but do not put any nonfiction into Storyworks. That was the only directive, because kids are not interested in nonfiction. Teachers don't want to teach nonfiction. So I said, okay, but then I thought, well, I was a struggling reader. I did not read a book until I was 14 years old. And when I started to read a little bit, what I wanted was true stories of real kids. So one of the first stories that I wrote in Storyworks was about this iconic blizzard that happened in the Dakota Territory, as it was called, Iowa, Minnesota, bits of Nebraska in 1888. It became known as the Children's Blizzard. And it was the true story of a boy whose name was Walter Allen, who was a little 8-year-old boy living going to a one-room schoolhouse. This enormous blizzard comes out of nowhere, slams into this vast swath of the northern plains on a January day, in the time before we had iPhones and satellites and any tools for predicting weather. So this blizzard hit right at the time when hundreds and hundreds of children in the plains, on the prairie, were in their one-room schoolhouses, like Walter Allen. Walter Allen ends up getting lost in the blizzard. It's an incredible story. His heroic brother Will helps rescue him. He's carried lifeless to his cabin with his parents, resuscitated, and he survived. So I ran the story. My boss liked it. I didn't get fired or in trouble. And I started getting a lot of emails from teachers who were very positive about this kind of narrative nonfiction. And I got a call from a woman, and I wish I remembered her name. Because this was many years ago. This was about 13 years ago now. And she called me up and she said she had a thick New York accent from the Bronx here. And she said, I want to tell you a story about what happened in my classroom when I read that blizzard story. She was a teacher in an extremely challenged, impoverished district of New York City. Most of her kids were, very struggling learners. She had a boy in her class who was a fourth grade teacher named Hector, who she had never even been able to assess. She didn't even know if he could read. He was a very, a child who had so many challenges in foster care, and she just did her best to make a safe place for this child and, hope that he wasn't too disruptive. So she said, I started reading this blizzard story. And normally when I'm doing a read aloud, Hector is running around the room and he's standing on the chairs, but Hector started to listen. And I was reading about Walter Allen. I was, the blizzard strikes and his eyes are froze shut. So we finished it and I noticed that Hector was listening closely. At recess, he swiped a copy of the magazine from my desk and went into the corner of recess and started reading it. He didn't say anything. He brought the magazine home. He appeared the next morning having read it so many times that he had essentially memorized it. And he asked me to take him to the library because he wanted to learn more. So she said to me, I get choked up because I remember her voice. And she said, you should really, too bad there aren't more books like this, where I can introduce kids to sort of another place, another time, have a lot of facts, but have it be something that really is relevant, that has a child. And she said, and don't ask me why, but for some reason, Hector from the South Bronx related to Will and Walter Allen from Dakota Territory in 1880. So there are a lot of different reasons why I started writing I Survived, but that voice, that teacher voice, was very much in my mind as I started writing the books. And frankly, I thought that it would be just a few kind of adventure stories, historical fiction. That was 12 years ago. Now I just about to release my 22nd book, and we now have 6 graphic novels with more coming, and these nonfiction collections, which are storywork stories that are teacher favorites, which then I expand and add a lot more to, because I find that these are, kid teachers want to have sometimes more depth to these. So if I look tired to you, which when I first signed on with Jim and Wendy, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to put some makeup on. So hopefully I don't look as exhausted, because it's been always very busy in the world of Storyworks and I Survive. So, we're always building an issue with our amazing team. The Chicago graphic novel is starting to come to life, and that comes out next year in 2023. I've started working on my 23rd I Survive book about the most powerful earthquake in American history. And I don't know if anyone would like to try to guess what that is. I don't know, you can use the chat, but I'll give you let's see if I can find the chat here. Of course I can't. I don't know if anyone's posting anything, Wendy. There it is. One chat here. Let's see. It is, I thought it would be San Francisco too, Justin. It's the Alaska earthquake of 1964. And it also unleashed these massive tsunamis. And it's been really interesting to delve into the history of the state of Alaska, the roots of seismology, because I'm always looking, when I'm writing a story for Storyworks or an I Survive book, I'm not just looking to write about, kind of some dreadful disaster. I'm really looking for a topic that helped to change attitudes, ideas, or our history, like the Revolutionary War, obviously. But Alaska's earthquake opened up the entire scientific understanding of plate tectonics. So it's an opportunity to help kids get into geology, build some knowledge about, some of these science areas. And then I'm also I put the finishing touches, we're putting finishing touches on the next graphic novel, which is about Hurricane Katrina, which is such a beautiful work by a young artist. He took my story brought to life by this incredible artist named Alvin Epps, who grew up in the lower 9th Ward of New Orleans, where this is set. And his connection and love for this city just comes through on every single page of these books. So, I also went on a trip with my husband into the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. I don't know if anyone has ever been there, but I always tell the kids, The Rocky Mountains are super famous. The Appalachian Mountains are super famous. The Smoky Mountains, we have these amazing mountains, but the Cascade Mountains, if there was a award for the fiercest mountain range, it's the Cascades. And then I pull out a map and I show them how it goes zigzags down from, Southern Canada through Washington to Northern California. There are 14 volcanoes. It's part of the Ring of Fire. And it was also during the time of westward settlement and expansion, it was the most difficult mountain range to cross. In fact, even the members of native nations and tribes who lived in that area, they didn't cross the Cascades because they were jammed too closely together. They get more snow than anywhere in the entire world. And it wasn't until the late 1800s that trains started to go through that people began to be able to traverse the Cascades. So my story, I went into the Cascades with my husband and we, walked in these beautiful forests and it was so peaceful, but we weren't there for the nature. We were there to retrace the path of a doomed train when in 1910, it was crossing the Cascades in the middle of winter. It was caught in the deadliest avalanche in American history. The Great Wellington Avalanche, where, is just a really incredible story again that helped change the way people traveled through the Cascades. And it's actually the topic of my next I Survive book. And it's also when you open your Storyworks magazines for back to school, I have a narrative nonfiction story that I've written about a real boy named Ray Sterrett who survived that disaster. So very often after I write, I write my I Survive stories, which are historical fiction, and I'll be, get you into share some of the research in a moment. But very often I get so captivated by some of the kids, the real people like the Walter Allens, that I discover in my research that I decide I have to bring this child to the readers of Storyworks. I want those, so they can read an I Survive book and it's historical fiction. And then there are lots of, I love being able to also provide you with a way of crossing the genres, building more knowledge, helping them develop even more understanding of these events through different lenses and perspectives, and it's fun. We're also maybe I'll show you the preview to this if I can get it to work, but we're also creating a virtual field trip into the Cascades for free during the school day that'll be in October, which will be advertised in Storyworks, where kids can come with me into the Cascade to see the wreckage. There's still wreckage of this. There's so much to share with you about this. So this was a big focus for me. Now, this book comes out in a couple of weeks and I only just went to Wellington. Normally, of course, it is far better for my research trip to take place before I have written a book because, I have traveled to every single place that I've written to for the I Survive series, except for two. And I always ask kids, I show my slide, I say, now kids, there's two places I haven't traveled to. One of them is Japan because it was too expensive and I didn't speak the language and too overwhelming. But there's one other place, just one, that I did not visit. And then I asked them to guess. So I don't know if anyone, I think you teachers will get it pretty quick, but it's always a fun little challenge to see if anyone has guessed I did not get to go down to the very bottom of, yes, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Rachel, to the bottom of the North Atlantic, 2.5 miles down to see the wreckage of the Titanic. But you should, when you get your Storyworks in the archive, the year before, I wrote a story that I loved writing about the discovery of the wreckage of the Titanic. So I love pairing a story about the Titanic, a book about the Titanic wreck, and then an equally incredibly exciting story about how Dr. Ballard discovered the wreckage in 1985 and how that absolutely opens up a world of understanding for your kids about undersea research, life at the bottom of the ocean. Really, really interesting. So anyway, I could just go on forever. You're going to have to just pull the plug on this at some point, Wendy. I get so excited sharing all this. But I have traveled to every other place, and my research process for I Survived and the Storyworks articles, of course, the books require much more because the stories have to be so much more detailed. But before traveling to a place, I will typically read 20 or 30 books, articles. I visit museums. I work with experts, historians, scientists. If it's a topic where there are people, here's a volcano that erupted in ancient Roman times, Mount Vesuvius. So here I'm talking with Ilaria, who's a historian and archaeologist, and going to Pompeii and wandering through the wreckage. When I wrote about Mount St. Helens, this was an opportunity, really kind of like the Alaska earthquake, to explore earth science, to talk to scientists, to help kids understand what volcanoes are, how they connect to, kind of other topics in earth science and geology. Great opportunity to go into geography, maps, topographical maps. Let's look at Kentucky. You don't have to worry about volcanoes in Kentucky. So for all of these books, it's just this, it is an enormous amount of information that I'm trying to synthesize. And I also share with kids anytime I can that I was a struggling reader. And for me, I still struggle to read. I still have whatever processing challenge kept me from reading books when I was a kid. I have to reread books 2 or 3 times. I also simultaneously very often listen to them on audio. And that's another thing you're going to find in Storyworks is we have audio read alouds, not just text to talk, which we have, but author read stories for every single nonfiction and fiction story, and also immersive read alouds that have sound effects and other things. Many articles on different levels, background building, slideshows, behind the scenes videos, because I understand how hard it is for so many learners to even begin to access a story on something like Gettysburg. What is Gettysburg? Is Pennsylvania a state? Is it a planet? I don't know. So we try to really build that background as we're going. But these trips have been, are so special because I very often get to meet, this actually grew out of the Children's Blizzard article that I wrote for Storyworks. It was, I've been to very exotic places in my research, but my favorite trip was to South Dakota, where I traveled through that state to the small towns that were impacted by the Children's Blizzard and met these children. These are Storyworks readers. This is a class in the tiny little town of Wessington Springs, who I met with at a tiny library. And they told me the stories of their that had been handed down to them by their grandparents, great-grandparents about that blizzard. So just being able to connect in that way with people all around the country, it's such a highlight for me. And so many of those stories go into shaping the I Survived books. A lot of the details from the Children's Blizzard book that I wrote came from the stories that these children and their parents and grandparents shared with me. So as I said, all of them, are amazing trips, but the most important trips for me are the trips where I am invited by people who have experienced disasters like people in Eastern Kentucky have just experienced, like the people of the Bowling Green area. I was actually there, I told Wendy, back in June, I think it was, visiting with schools that had been impacted by those tornadoes. And maybe I met some of you, I hope I did. But this is a story that this teacher, Margaret Boudreau, wrote to me from Baton Rouge after their school was destroyed in a flood. Had this incredible visit with her, and she really wanted to, those kids wanted to share stories about how they all banded together as a community to help each other. The same thing happened in Joplin. I ended up going to Joplin, Missouri, at the invitation of all these teachers and librarians and kids who said, Ms. Tarshis, you write about all these really important events that have happened in America. Well, something really important here. We had an EF5 tornado touchdown in 2011, and it had a 13-mile path of destruction. But that, again, I went there twice, and the stories they wanted to share wasn't about, necessarily crouching in their storm shelters or their basements. It was what happened after. This one boy came up to me and said, where are you from? You're from New York City. A man came from New York City and came to our neighborhood and helped our neighbors comb through their wreckage to look for photographs and other things. So just those stories are, have become such an important part of this work. The most recent example of this involved the Fishers. This is Holly and Josh Fisher. They live in Paradise, California, which, as you might recall, in 2018 was a town that was really almost completely destroyed by a wildfire, by the camp wildfires. And about a day or two after those fires, when it was still smoldering, I got an email from Holly, who's a nurse. Her husband's a firefighter who helped fight that fire, saying, that she was with her son, Josh, who reads Storyworks, and I survived. And she said, Lucas thought that he brought your books in his backpack when we fled, and he thought that I should write to you and that you would want to come and hear this story. So again, a lot of conversations, and I ended up going there twice. And meeting not only Holly and Josh, but then meeting, hundreds and hundreds of children who really, and I didn't know that I was going to write anything about this. I don't want to be disrespectful and say, I'm here to write about your event. By the way, I hate that these books are called I Survived, by the way, because I always say to kids, what's wrong with that title? I didn't survive. It should be they survived, he survived, she survived. But I guess I'm stuck with I Survived for now, because, I have learned that for some people, sharing a story, talking about it, can be in some ways helpful. Not for everyone. Not everyone wants to talk about it. So I go if I'm invited by teachers and librarians, and it's always sort of, but these kids were like, are you going to write an I Survived? What are you going to write? So we ended up doing something really, I think, really special. I wrote a nonfiction story about that focused on 3 different people who were in that file: the Fishers, Lucas Fisher, and Holly and their kids, Eleanor, a friend of Lucas's, and oh my goodness, and Kevin McKay, who was a bus driver who drove for 6 hours through the flaming streets with 21 kids and teachers on his bus escaping the flames. And that story is just incredible. So what was really special about it was, at the end, we always have a writing prompt and an authentic writing activity at the end of every Storyworks article. And this was, write a letter to one of the people in the article telling them what you learned about Paradise Fire and sharing your own message of hope for them. So we received about 5,000 letters, and we sent, we culled through them and we bundled them up and we sent them to each of these people. And I can't tell you, this is Lucas and Savannah reading these letters, and just the sort of circular nature of that. So many kids, Storyworks readers, they just wanted to express their empathy, express their admiration. And Holly, the Fishers are really they've stayed in Paradise. They're trying to rebuild their town. Josh is really on a mission to try to rebuild it in a more fireproof way, with defensible space and foliage that is more, not going to burn and all of that. So it's just been so inspiring. I'm still in close touch with them. I'm trying to get them to come visit me, and we keep getting close, but it's a little bit, one of these days. But it's interesting because it came to me sort of, I guess it took me too long to understand that I'm really not writing about avalanches or fires or earthquakes. The theme of that of I Survived is really resilience. And another thing that I regret about the title I Survived is because somehow it connotes that that's the end. Oh, I survived, great, okay, we're done. But we all know that there's a lot of healing, that people heal at their own rate. You need help. Being brave does not mean not being scared. And so one of the things that I've really been working harder and harder on in the books as the series has gone on and in the articles is to try to model a realistic vision of what it means. And it is, and I can tell you, I used to live with my mother-in-law. She lived with us. I'm the only daughter-in-law in history who like lived with her mother-in-law for 10 years and can honestly say, I wish I got to spend more time with my mother-in-law because she was a very like, she would be played by like Maggie Smith or Dame Judi Dench. She's this very dignified, amazing woman, but she was a survivor of the Holocaust. Her husband, my husband lost a lot of family, and my mother-in-law from the age of 17 to 27, following her father being put in a concentration camp, and her mother, after whom my daughter is named Valerie, was able to get him out. They lived for 10 years in a ghetto in Shanghai, China. And the hardship that she experienced year after year after year. I mean, they lived in one room with no stove, no heat, no toilet, nothing. I'm a kind of a night, I wake up in the middle of the night a lot, and I would get up in the middle of the night and I'd hear this sound from my mother-in-law's suite, this little suite of rooms off our living room. And it would be her beautiful, booming laugh. She would be on the phone with her friend Hilda in Rome, another refugee, or Eva, who lives in Vienna. And this was a woman filled with joy. This was a woman who had horrible memories and had scars and had sorrow that would always be in her heart from what she lost. But she was a person whose life was filled with joy. And to me, a lot of times I find it strange that I have become a more optimistic person since writing I Survived. And it's because of meeting people like the teachers of Bowling Green, oh my gosh, and the Fishers, and my librarian friends in Joplin, and Margaret Boudreau in Baton Rouge, that I see for myself that people can go through such devastating loss, and it is possible to move forward. And I just find that very reassuring. And that is, again, the message that I'm most interested in sharing through the work that I do. So that is, I mean, I could, as I said, I wish I had, Wendy said I could have all night with you, but I know you have to give, but I wonder if there are any questions you have. And I also just met Wendy, and I wanted to make sure you know that for those of you who are going to be using Storyworks, I really want to open, we're like a family. And so when you're ready, Wendy will let me know, and we'll have some sort of special for you Zoom, we can do a little training. I want to show you my favorite articles and videos from the archive. I want to know, I'm pretty aware of the Kentucky standards, so I can help you, depending on your grade level, connect to your science and social studies standards. I will give you our editor's pick. I want you to meet our team. We can do some Zooms for Kentucky kids. We do a lot of that, where little writing workshops. So you're kind of part of the family now. And I just wanted to put you on alert that we are here, and we really want to, this is just part of how also the resource evolves, because we are constantly changing it to better fit your needs. So the more we can connect with you, the more we can create something that's really going to support you and bring joy to your classroom and help your kids really become stronger, more confident readers and learners. All right, no more talking. I want to hear from you.
And I will say, not everyone gets the editor saying, let me show you how to implement Kentucky standards when you're using Storyworks. So woohoo, thank you so much for that, Lauren. We appreciate that. And please, we did kind of allow this time for questions. So please, if you have questions, the floor is yours.
It always takes a little time to get to warm up. While we're waiting for questions, I will share that, oh, who is this? Your son is wanting to know when the new book is coming out. Brittany, is your son with you? I'm looking at the, and I see Rob, and I see a very fantastic looking boy. Who is that? Who is that Rumsey boy I'm looking at? Hi to you. Big hello.
And we've got Heather's son, and we've got Brody with
Hi,
Robin
Brody.
And Brittany. I'm trying to find you on camera.
Hi, Brody. Great. I'm so glad you came. I hope it was interesting. My kid presentation's a little different, but hopefully there were some things that were good for you.
Oh, I see Brittany now.
Yeah. So the new book comes out in in a few weeks in September, the Avalanche book, and you'll have lots of work still choosing the date for the Wellington. Oh, I'll show you the promo. Actually, I really want to hear what Brody, who else do we have here? What I want the kids to see this. Wendy, tell me if you think this will work, because I'm going to play it from, this is very quick. This is a minute and a half, and this is a promo for the virtual field trip. And I kind of have to show it to you. It's a little, I feel it's like a little ridiculously dynamic. My husband helped to create it. I think it's a little too dramatic, the music, a little overblown, but let's see. We'll see. You can be honest with me. Let's see. So I'm going to do this. I'm sharing sound. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see. Wendy, give me a heads up or a thumbs down or is that working? Hi, readers. More than 100 years ago, the deadliest avalanche in United States history struck high in the mountains of Washington State. The huge wave of snow, boulders, and trees came crashing down from the Cascade Peaks, sweeping two giant trains into a deep canyon while destroying everything else in its path. When this thundering disaster was over, nearly 100 people had lost their lives, and new plans were being made for safer train travel over high mountain passes. This is the topic of my newest I Survived book and my articles in Scope and Storyworks magazine. And now I'm preparing an amazing adventure for you to join me for a virtual field trip to the top of the Cascade Mountains. We'll retrace the path of the doomed trains and see the wreckage. We'll walk in the footsteps of those who survived, and we'll meet historians who have helped keep this story alive for more than a century. We are going to have such an exciting adventure together, and kids, teachers, parents, families, I hope you're all going to join me. A little too much drama, but that's I do think that will be fun. And we do a lot of these immersive experiences as part of Storyworks as well. We really want to help you connect your kids to the places and people that they're reading about. So that's something that we're really leaning into even more. And I should say that what we are imagining for Kentucky, that's what the teacher that I'm working with in Hazard, that's Hazard, right, Wendy? They would I think we're imagining that a kind of magazine package, again, kind of like we did for Paradise. So, all right, I'm looking for questions, Kentucky teachers, and I'm not seeing. Oh, thanks, Brody. I'm glad that you like that. Okay, yes. So Jane, I'm sorry.
Is any of your book going to become a movie?
Well, Susie, hi there.
Hi.
This is the interesting thing, and I'll just give you, this is what I've learned. We've had a lot of discussions, and I was very close to signing a contract with a it would have been really fun to brag about it, like, oh, but what the problem is that when you make a movie deal as a series author, you have to sign away every bit of control. They can do anything they want. And I'm still writing this series, so they want the rights to every future book I write. It's not I will be honest, it's not like you're making gazillions. It's not like it's more like it would be really cool and it would be fun. But unless I feel so strongly about the I don't want to be grandiose, but what I'm trying to accomplish with these books. I've worked so hard that I don't feel like until there's like the graphic novels, it's such an amazing team. I feel they really extend the readership they allow the books to be accessible to more kids. They're bringing them to life in a new way, and they just care about them so much. So if I could find someone like that, yes. But so far we've just had two very close things. And in the end, we just didn't feel that it was going to work out. But it would be really fun. And then there was a question here. let's see. Oh, do I have a favorite? I definitely feel more of a connection to those books like Paradise and Joplin. But I don't, the books are so hard to write. I really, they take about a year each one. And on top of all the research, I write maybe 20 different drafts. It's it's a very arduous process. There's so much information that I have to put together and then try to make it an exciting story. And there's all that background information I want to make sure, all of you kids have, and I don't want to make it boring. Because I know that like Roblox and Minecraft and, Netflix and TikTok, everything's just like lurking to grab their attention away from my book. So Jamie had asked any stories that I could use with my first grade reading group or Storyworks now we have a full suite first grade first. We just are launching our grade 1 version. So we have first grade, second grade, third grade, and then the Storyworks is really designed for 4-5. So it's very exciting because they're really designed to build knowledge and skills in that same way, be super engaging. And it's been my dream to kind of be able to complete that suite of Storyworks. So let's see. Cassandra, what story would you suggest someone start with their middle school classes? Well, you're going to get your issues. Well, when are issues going to be in the classrooms, Wendy? Are they going to be in?
As soon as everyone that attend the live session. So if you are a charge, so I probably need to reveal my Oprah moment at this point. If you are a charge teacher leader and you are attending live, you will get you will get a Storyworks subscription. So yay! Yeah, hurrah, hurrah. If you are everyone that's in attendance today will get your choice of a book. So you get to choose your I Survive book. That'll be on your evaluation form. So so you get to choose your I Survive book, everyone in attendance today. But if you are part of the charge grant, then you get a subscription to Storyworks for your classroom. And so here's my one thing that I would tell Renaissance teachers. If you have someone in your building that you're like, man, you need to be instructional, you need to align this to your curriculum, because we can buy that curriculum for social studies teachers, for ELA teachers. That's the one component that Renaissance we don't have. So make sure you have people in your building in Renaissance that are in the charge grant. So we will order that ASAP this week and they will have access to it. And then we will get back in touch with Lauren and she will instruct us on how to best use the Storyworks magazine for Kentucky standards and all of that. So.
And thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so thrilled. And I'm looking at who asked that middle grade, Cassandra, there's so many. And I think, the Storyworks is a blended product. So when you're new to the resource, you receive a print magazine for every child. And then you have, everything every story works beautifully on every device. And you'll have this huge treasure trove of support instructional materials for every single story to support your skills development, vocabulary, quizzes, so you can sort of assess and check comprehension. But for new subscribers, you'll want, I think, to hand out that issue, and then you can certainly use the archive and they can read digitally. But I think that, there's a lot of amazing stories coming this fall I think your kids are going to just love. So, and please, anyone is welcome to email me at any time. I live for teacher emails, as I really do mean that. To my Scholastic email, Wendy, Tarshis@Scholastic, and we can, and I can help you choose. Okay. Few more questions here is what inspired me to write children's books. Hi, Pamela. I did not love history as a child. I felt very shut out because of my reading problems, which I kept very quiet. No one knew. It wasn't until I was much older. And what I always tell kids is that when I start writing a book, I know nothing about the topic. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, really, I have to learn all about the Revolutionary War. But what I find is the more you learn, the more fascinating things become. And the more things you're interested in, the more interesting life is. So that's a big message that I send to kids when I meet with them and talk to them, and is like, you don't have to know anything about anything, when you start out. And the other thing I do really love about writing the series is just I'm always learning. I mean, it's a never ending journey, very much so. Rachel, Storyworks, we have a wonderful kindergarten magazine called Let's Find Out that is that connects also into the Storyworks suite, and is those are, I call them the wild ladies of early childhood. They're incredible. So they create a magazine that is so perfectly pitched to the kindergartner, with beautiful read alouds and great videos. And once again, we're starting to build that knowledge. I also just want to say, because I think it's a little bit of an elephant in the room, any room right now, when we're educators, when we're talking, is I know what a fraught time this is. We know how overwhelmed you all are. So we're trying to make your lives easier. We're also trying to make our content very uniting. So you're going to find stories in Storyworks that are for everyone, and that are going to make we Americans feel like one country, that it's going to remind us of our shared values as Americans. And that also is something that has been, a really interesting part of what we're trying to do here. So the kindergarten stuff is so adorable. Like I can't even look at it without that. Let's see, any more questions here? I'm glad, Brittany, that your daughter is going to read these. I'm so excited that that you guys are going to be, those of you who are going to do Storyworks. And Valerie, my daughter's name is Valerie. Will we continue to make the graphic novels? Yes. You can tell your son the answer is yes. Those have been really fun to do. And what I love to see, a lot of times I go into a classroom and they have sort of a heterogeneous like small group, and half the kids are reading the graphic novel, and then half the kids are reading the core novel. And there's the amazing discussions that the kids are able to have together. And the graphic novels are just, I mean, it's interesting because for older kids, there's a nice, they connect, but they're also nice scaffolds for the kids who might not feel quite as prepared to read, a historical fiction novel, even though I try to make them very accessible. Oh, the other thing I forgot to tell you is that on my website, laurentarshis.com, there are tons of free resources for every single I Survived book. And I work with the same pedagogy that we use for Storyworks, in terms of the nature of the questions, the comprehension, background building videos. So I just want to make sure that you guys, can extend, if the kids are liking them, that you can use them in the instructional blocks. Let's see. Thank you, Brandy. Tell your son and daughter hello. Well, it has been so fun to be able to connect with you. And I feel that this is, I would simply say, to be continued.
Absolutely. I think the excitement is pouring over, and you're getting lots of sweet waves, Lauren, lots of cute, sweet waves. Personally, I think I love that your children joining us. I think that should be a requirement now on all of our Zoom sessions. Is you all are so much cuter with your kiddos beside you. Lauren, we thank you so very much. I know that for me, this has been just, the behind the scenes access and learning how you go about making a series that everyone, students and teachers alike, have fallen in love with. So thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for the wonderful offer to come back and join us once we have Storyworks in our classroom. That is amazing. I know we're all super excited about that. And I know from all 84 of us that were online, thank you so very much. This has been wonderful. What a great way to start our new school year is just having you. I think you said something that, sharing stories can be so helpful, and just reminding us to be filled with joy, regardless of circumstances. So we know our school years, who knows what may be thrown at us this school year. It seems like the past couple of school years have been daunting to say the least, but just to be people filled with joy because our students need that. So I love that you kicked us off in that way. So
Well,
thank
and
you.
thank you, Wendy, and thanks to all of you. And I'll finish by simply thanking you all for doing what you're doing. And we are just our whole office, like, we spend all our time talking about you all and thinking of ways to try to, show our appreciation and to support you. And I am just so, and Kentucky teachers, you guys are really just quite wonderful. So thank you very much again, Wendy. We'll be in touch, and everyone, please reach out anytime. I can't wait to hear from you, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. And bye to all you kids. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And ladies and gentlemen, what I will do, since there are 2 separate evaluations, I will email that to you. You can, if you have access to the calendar, it's already up. Gabby already has it up for you. But if you're looking for that wonderful email from you, I will email that to you. If you would like, there is a little book list that you can choose your book. But if there is a specific book that you're like, oh, I already have these, because I think we just did like a little small snippet. Or if you would like to hold out, I know Gabby's amazing. I agree. I echo that by 10,000. But if there is, like, for example, if you don't mind holding out and you're like, I want that newest copy, I don't know. I can't remember what Lauren said when the release date would be. If you want to just put that maybe perhaps on the bottom in the comments and not select your book choice, we're fine with that as well. And I would have loved to been able to purchase Storyworks for everyone. And then Dr. Evans and I got to looking at arts group. Don't worry, you're getting something just as equally as awesome. I will share that with you all soon. So don't think that you're being left out. By no means. We've got something equally as awesome for you all. Charge group, you all will be getting the Storyworks, and I'll send that in a follow up. That way I can know if you're wanting it sent to school addresses and all of that. But Renaissance, don't think I'm leaving you out, because that's not how I roll. Thank you all. This has been wonderful. If you have any questions, I'll be on. This is a wonderful way to kick it off, right? Great first session back. So I will be on for any questions. I just love her. She's the best.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've never read any of her books, but they look amazing.
Oh,
So
great.
I don't know which one would be